Is it working?
I click this one.
It is. Great. All right. So I'll cut all this out once, the live stream is done. But welcome back, right? So take two. This is Erica from Ever Educating, and I'm going ahead and just re-recording what I just covered 15 minutes ago. And basically, if you didn't know, this year I'm doing live streams, Q&A basically. So if you submit your question in the form that I have linked below, then I'll answer it live later on once I've collected a few of them together. In this case, I have 2 questions I'm covering today. And as well as if you're someone who'd rather do a one-on-one call and ask a lot of questions for me, just for me, I have linked below my Creative Confidence call as well. So you can do that service. It's a paid service versus these free live streams, but it's another option in case you're interested. And so today, to get right to the first question, which is actually 2 questions in one, the submitter asked, with the advent of generative predictive text services such as ChatGPT, which can pass the university undergrad exam, how do you think instructors should change assessment tactics? Also, how do you think the existence of this technology should change what instructors focus on during course instruction? And so to get to the first one, right, how do you think instructors should change assessment tactics? This is really going to depend on the type of course you're teaching. Because, for example, if you teach a course where there's an external exam that's important for the field, so let's say the bar exam, well, you don't want to change your assessments because in that case, you're not prepping your student for the bar, because most likely you're going to have assessments that mimic the question structure of the bar exam. That's important prep for your student. So yes, maybe they're going to use ChatGPT to cheat and to answer your questions, and that's an issue. But if you were to change the style of the assessment to make that harder, well, when they got to the bar exam, if they don't have practice with the types of questions that are on there, it makes it much harder for them, right? So that can be a very big negative of changing your assessment style. Now, on another hand, right, so maybe you have a course where the assessment structures can be anything you want them to be because there is no external exam in that same way. Well, in this case, yes, potentially you want to see about changing them into different formats, different mediums. But ChatGPT can do a lot, right? So if you say, okay, I'm not going to do essays anymore because they can just write them, the AI, I'm going to have them create podcast episodes. Well, you can ask for a script for a podcast episode on the AI too. So that's not completely getting around the difficulties of, the power of AI nowadays. So I think really thinking about, is the best step to change the assessment style, or is the best step to be more transparent and have conversations with your students about ChatGPT? What would be considered plagiarism? What would be considered academic dishonesty? How relying on the AI will have negative effects because, well, if you don't learn these skills because you're relying on AI to do it for you, when you're tasked to do it in different courses or later on in your career and you can't, well, you can't always rely on AI, right? You have to be able to do the work at some point. And so why not start that now, right? Why not gain the skills now? So I think having really open and honest conversations with your students about the place of AI and the place of not using AI is going to be key here, which is something I mentioned in that video that I recorded, earlier on a few weeks ago. But I think that aspect of, okay, let's discuss, well, if you're going to use ChatGPT, how can you use it in this course? How can you not use it in this course? What can it do that is helpful, is valuable, right? And ethical versus what is not? If you do use it, how are you going to cite it in your assignment you submit to me, right? So open conversation is going to be really key here. Yes, some assessment redesign might be helpful, but you don't want to go so far that you're hurting students in the long run because it's not tying in well to their career. Because if they're, a business student and they're going to be having to write business plans, yes, you can ask AI to write you a business plan. That doesn't mean you shouldn't assign a business plan assignment, but you should have, again, conversations with your students about having their own original work, making sure that they're using any tool they use in the classroom ethically. Now, the second part of your question, how do you think that the existence of this technology should change what instructors focus on during course instruction? I'm not sure if there should be major changes in what you focus on in the class. The exception potentially might be including some writing activities in the class that you didn't do before. So perhaps you had a lot of lecturing, a lot of activities in your class sessions, and then the homework is to write those papers, to write those assignments. That might still be the main structure, but potentially every once in a while, you have them do that in class. So, okay, you know what? The activity for this class period is to draft your thesis statement for your assignment. So close, the computer, put away your phone. I want you to just work in your journal, drafting ideas for your thesis statement. Have to do that for a while. Okay, partner up, compare notes, help them revise their thesis and have them help you revise yours, make it even stronger. All right, let's share them aloud in the class. Let's discuss the pros and cons. Let's, give even more improvement to them. And at the end of the class period, go ahead and submit your thesis statements to me. These are the ones you're going to be using for your paper. So in that way, you've required them to create their thesis statements without relying on tech, right? So you can ensure that that is original to them. And then we do that throughout the unit. So, okay, we're going to take some time to write today, right? Go ahead and work on your intro paragraph. Work on your finding your more analysis for your research. Let's talk about what you've drafted so far, and I'll give you feedback live, and you can get feedback from your classmates. So having opportunities in class where they have to be proving that they are writing it themselves. So that can be one potential difference in the course instruction aspect. But that's the main one I can think of when it comes to, how AI might influence actual lessons themselves. So those are my answers, right? I do have more information about dealing with ChatGPT in that video that I've linked below. But the second question is based off of the call that I had recently, the Creative Confidence call. And I mentioned that I was going to do some follow-up. And so next week, we'll have a more detailed follow-up about what I'm about to say. But basically, she asked about having more efficient lesson planning processes. And so I talked about this plug and play method of lesson planning. And so the basic idea here that I'll cover today is figuring out what structures of lessons work best for your class, for your students and for you. So maybe you teach Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, 50 minutes each time. And so you're going to brainstorm what are some structures that could work. Maybe a 15-minute lecture on Monday, a 15-minute group activity on Wednesday, a 15-minute discussion of that group activity on Friday. That's one structure. What's another one? Doing a 15-minute warm-up activity and then a 35-minute main activity on Monday. Wednesday is a discussion of that activity that they started on Monday. And Friday is an individual written activity that they turn in, right? And so on and so forth. So you create different approaches of how the class periods are structured, and you just follow that pattern over and over again, experimenting with the ones that work best for your students and for you. So maybe you've brainstormed 10 ideas of structures, and after you try them all out, you realize that these 7 work well, these 3 work poorly. Okay, take out those 3. Of those 7, again, more experimenting, it's these 4 that work best for everybody. Okay, and maybe you alternate those 4 over and over again throughout the rest of the term because you have that element of, it works well for everyone, and you don't have to plan constantly. Okay, what are we going to do next week? Start from scratch? No. Look at my list. We're going to do this structure, for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Next week, we're going to do this other one. The following week, we're going to do this first one again. And so that's just an idea here about efficient lesson planning. At the beginning, it takes more time because you have to brainstorm all these structures and such. But once you have it all down, it becomes much easier later on this semester. And like I said, next week, I go into more detail. So there's that first level of plug and play at the structure level. But then there's more layers as well that I'll cover in that video next week. If you don't want to miss that, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Click like if you found this helpful. If you have, again, your own questions you want to ask me, that link is below for you to submit them. Or if you want to talk one-on-one and more personal, then that link is below as well. I have a few videos that I've included below, one about ChatGPT and then 2 about lesson planning in case you want more information now. But I hope you found this helpful, and I hope Take 2 went better as far as audio goes. I'll see you next time with a new video.